What's up, guys? So in this video today, I'm gonna be going over how I closed my very first 100 grand in real estate. And I'm not saying 100 grand through multiple deals. I'm saying 100 grand off of one house here in Houston. Okay, so in this video, I'm gonna be going over how I got the deal, how I was able to get it so cheap, and one thing, the part after the deal is mistakes and things I should have done differently after closing that deal. So if you ever find yourself in the same shoes that I was in when I was 20 or had just turned 21 back in 2021, how to make sure that you maximize that deal so that you're set up for success in the future. And then a little side note, I don't love talking about this. I don't talk about it too often, but looking back at it, it was a huge accomplishment that I should pat myself on the back for. But it, it's kind of like, that, I never want to be that guy that says, oh, I used to be really good back in, in high school football, and that's their their main achievement that they keep talking back to. I'm hoping to close, my next 100 grand deal and hopefully, bigger ones after then. So let's get into it. Hopefully I'm not doxing myself and y'all can, fucking just pull up on me. But this is Houston, right? If you're in Houston, and this is where I close the deal, here in Santa Fe. And then you'll see the address right here. It was here in a little corner right here, All's House Street. I still remember the street. I'll drive by it every now and then if I'm in the area in Santa Fe. But basically what I did, I just went driving for dollars. If you don't know what driving for dollars is, you basically hop in your car, right? So I live here and I would just drive throughout the cities, right? Throughout the city. So I'd go, in these little neighborhoods right here. I've been all up and down these neighborhoods. You can see right here, back in the day, I used to do it this way. I used to add pins, right? I used to add pins to houses that I would see and be like, all right, I'm going to put it into a little wholesale, little wholesale folder, right? I didn't do that for too long. Eventually I just switched to screenshotting. So I would just click on a property, screenshot it, and add it to a list. Right? So I would drive all these neighborhoods, all the older neighborhoods that have 1980 built homes. I didn't really like driving the neighborhoods. It's cool here. You can see it on the map. The neighborhoods that look fancy, they have water, like a waterway in them, fancy, street, street designs. No, I just drove the boring roads that had just square, no waterways, stuff like this. This is awesome to go drive for dollars in, oh man, that's amazing to go drive for dollars in. And then if you see here in Santa Fe, in this little neighborhood, same thing here. You'll see here that these streets are kind of like the boring design, square design, no fancy curbs. If you look here, this is a brand new development here in Texas City, and you see waterways, you see fancy curbs and designs. You want to stay out of these, right? So go into these right here, the square ones, right? And before you drive out, go out and look, okay, which neighborhoods do I want to drive in to maximize your time? So I've done that all over the city. I did that all over the city. And then one day I was like, you know what? I kind of ran out of places to drive over here, right? Let me go out into the country and, see what I see over here, see what I find over here. And that's when I came across this house, 3909 All's House. And you'll see here, this is my list. So every single property, I would do this every week, every 2 weeks, I'd go out and drive for houses on the weekends, right? When there's not much to do, not many people to call. So I'd go out and I'd add a list of addresses, right? I find a list of properties, right? Find properties. How many do I have in here? I have 87 people in here, right? So that's it's a small number. It's not it's not the smallest, but it could be bigger, right? I've had lists of 130, 200, right? And then even now we're pulling lists online for 10,000 minimum, right? But these are good people, good houses that I've put eyes on, and I was like, okay, these houses are in disrepair. They probably need to sell to somebody, right? And that's where I found this house. So, this is a house right here, and you'll see 13909 All's House Street, Santa Fe, Texas, 77510, right? And I was all right. So all these houses, at the time, this house didn't stand out. None of these houses stood out. They're like, all right, I'm just gonna call through this whole list, see who bites, right? I got the name of the owner right here. Once I skip traced it, got the name of the owner, and then I put it into another list right here. And this is the list, right? I went ahead and blanked out his phone number. Hopefully, y'all can still find it some way, somehow, but hopefully y'all don't take that effort, which I don't know why y'all would, but this is the list right here. So this list was originally looked like this. Let me just go in here and just reset it. Originally, it looked like this, right? So I just had the names, right? The addresses, the city, state, zip code, and the phone numbers. All the stuff I could just kind of, delete, right? I don't really need that. I just needed the phone numbers. So I would call from 9 to 12, back in 2020, 2021, I would call every single phone number on this list. I'd call this one, then I go to this one, then I go to this one. I'd be like, all right, I didn't reach William, right? Then I go to the next one. And this was my color coding system. If it was a wrong number, I put it as gray. If it was a disconnected number, I put it as black. Then I'd go down. Reds were people who never answered the phone. Black again, disconnected. Blue is somebody who said, yes, Carlos, I would consider an offer on my house, right? And I would write them down on a whole separate spreadsheet. I'd put their name on a separate spreadsheet. Be like, all right, this guy is somebody who's interested in selling his house, and I need to get back to him with an offer, right? Or go see the house. Yellow, right here, I would keep calling that on the list. Yellow is somebody who said, no, I'm not interested. Please remove me off your list, right? So yellow. And then you can kind of get the gist, red, again, no answers. The numbers that I left white, they're just people who I called. It wasn't a disconnected number, but I left a voicemail or the number, they just didn't pick up, right? So I was like, okay, I can go back and call back through all the white numbers, right? And all the people that were on red. Orange, I believe, was a maybe, or like somebody who I think I spoke to them and like, well, they might be interested in selling, but they're not here right now. So looking back at it, I probably should have put it as blue, but it was, I put it as orange at the time. But anyways, regardless, that's how I found this property, the All's House property. And I called him. He said, yes, I'm interested in selling. And I was all right. Well, when can I go see the house? Again, I only live like 30 minutes away from that house. So I was like, let me go out there. Let me go meet you in person and let me go see the house, right? So I went out there, went to go see the house, and you can't really see actually, let me show you what the house looks like. Looked like. It doesn't look like that anymore. But this is what the house was like back in 2021. So that was the worst foundation I'd ever seen. I'd never seen a worse foundation. I have seen now, but that was the worst foundation I'd ever seen. I think a rat ran out on me from under that bed. Had no lights. The property, you can kind of see you probably fall down to the center of the earth through that property, through that line. Right. This picture loads, or this video. There it goes. This was the kitchen area, the living room area. It was a decently sized house. I'll show you all the specs on it now. But the property had been flooded. The owner had remodeled it, and then it flooded again. And he was like, man, I'm fucking done with this house. I don't want to deal with it anymore. My kids have moved out. I'm done. I don't want to put any more money into this house. So that was the property. I spoke to him, met him at the house. And at the time, this is the house right here. At the time, this was a lot. It was this whole thing, right? But it was sectioned off. If I could draw a line, I don't think I could draw a line, but it was sectioned off to a line right here and a line right here. So it only sat on this piece of property right here. And this was his as well, but I didn't see that before I went out there. I just saw his name was under this, and I didn't even think to click on this part, right? So I went out there expecting it was a tiny house, right? And I was like, all right, I'm just going to offer him on the house. And while I was there, he was like, yeah, Carlos, I'm done with the house. I want $100,000 for the house. And I was like, we might be able to do that. I think I might have to offer you lower. But he's like, I want $100,000, and I'm selling the 2 acres in the back. Once he said the 2 acres in the back, I was like, bro, there has to be something here. This definitely, is worth something, right? So I was like, you know what? I might be able to do that. Let's go ahead and put it on paper, And I put on my contract right then and there, and I was like, let's go ahead and do it. And you see here, this is my contract with him. Now you see here the 115 price. He actually told me he didn't want to sign yet because he was like, I want to get with my wife, see what she says. And that's when he came back to me. I called him the next day. I was like, hey man, did you get to speak to your wife? I was calling to see if y'all are ready to move forward. And then he was like, man, we are, but we want 130. My wife wants 130. He was like, I'm fine with 100, but my wife, wives can be. This was his words, not mine. He's like, she wants more money. I was all right. Well, let me go out there and see the house. And I didn't really need to go see the house. I just wanted to, meet him in person. So I went out there, or just meet him in person and get to talk to him in person again, That way I could get a better chance of signing it at my price. So I went out there. I was like, you know what? I could maybe do the 115 or the 130, but could we meet in the middle at 115? He was like, well, we might be able to, as on my side, it's fine. We can do that. But it all comes down to what boss lady says. And I was like, man, you mind if we get on the phone? And he called her right then and there. I was like, hey, talking here. Can we meet in the middle at 115? And we went ahead and met in the middle at 115, and I got the contract signed. All right, got the contract signed, and then I put a lockbox on the property right after. So as you can see here, I got it at 115. The very next day, I sent it out to a buyer, and the guy said no. He was like, man, I don't want it at okay, so here's how I priced it. I was like, I think I could sell it for like 180, but I was like, you know what? Just for round numbers, I'm going to shoot it out of 215. See who bites at 215, just to, see if I can make that 100, right? So I sent it to one guy. He's like, no, I'm not interested. And then the other guy, I was like, hey man, I got this deal. It's at 215. And the guy actually ended up living like over here. He was like, man, that's my shit. I love this area. I love Santa Fe. Let me go take a look at it. He actually told me, he was like, don't sell this deal to anybody else. I want it. I just need to go walk it first. So he went out there, walked it, and he was like, man, I'll do it. I'll take it at 215. And I was like, holy fuck. Like, I think I had like $500 in my bank account at most. I probably had less, but I had never seen real money in my bank account before then, right? I was a barista before then. My rent was like $200 a month. I just moved out of my parents' house, and yeah, that was a pretty cool feeling. But fast forward, we ended up locking up the deal with him, but it took like another 3 months for it to sell because of some title issues. He owed some liens on there, so we had to get those figured out. But after those 3 months were over, we ended up being able to, close on the deal. So as you can see here, the realtor, so he actually listed it for 450, and it sold for, let's see here, 410,000. So he bought it for 215. I think he put 100 into it. And the guy is, I'm really, I'm still close friends with him. The house did not look like this, by the way. And I don't have a picture of what it looked like back then. But he flipped it. He made it look like this, and he made 100 grand. The flipper made 100 grand. So I made 100 grand, and then the flipper made 100 grand, which I didn't have the money to buy it at that time. So, some of y'all might be saying, why didn't you just buy it? And I was like, man, I need, I had $500. Like, there was no way I was going to buy this myself. Right. So I was fine that he made 100 grand. And that I made 100 grand, right? And he was fine that I made 100 grand. Because after he found out, I told him, I was like, man, you just made me 100 grand. Like after we closed, I didn't tell him before because I didn't want to like risk him, being like, I have to pay a bit less. I don't want to risk that. So I told him after I met up with him, and I gave him the keys, and I was like, dude, you just made me 100 grand. And he was like, bro, fuck yeah, dude. So again, he's a solid guy, solid buyer. But yeah, this was the property right here. And I'll show y'all, see if I can find the check. So here's some pictures of me at closing. This was, I took my mom to go close it with me. On this one, I actually double closed on it. So what double close means is that instead of me just assigning it directly to the buyer, I actually bought it myself. And I know I said I couldn't buy it myself earlier, but I'll tell you how that works. I actually bought it myself, and then I sold it to the guy on the very same day, right? And I didn't bring my own money. I actually found a lender in that area that would lend the money for the day, and he would get paid that same day. I ended up paying like $2,500, or actually maybe like a total of like $2,500 to the lender, and then maybe like another like $2,500 to the title company for closing fees, right? Because I had to pay my own closing fees to be able to like sell it as my own property, because the buyer didn't want to pay those extra fees on his end. Okay, because he was like, if you're gonna, he was like, you can just assign it and have only one set of closing fees. But if you want to double close, you have to pay your own closing fees. I was like, all right, dude, that's fine. I'll do that just to, not have you see what I make. Okay, that's the reason I double close, because if I was assigning it to him, he would be seeing what I make before he closes. But if I double close and I buy it myself, he's not seeing what I make. He's just seeing what he's paying for it. Okay. Then this is the check right here. Whenever I hit the account, I was still kind of in disbelief. I had looked at my phone. I had like been refreshing my phone that whole next day. I just hoping that it came in. And then I looked at my account at one point that day after refreshing it like 30 times, and it was all there. 94,000. I didn't make the full 100 grand, but it was all there in the account. $94,784. So I made 94 grand. And again, if you haven't felt that feeling, go out there and chase that feeling, because it honestly felt pretty fucking good. But now to get into kind of what I should have done with that money, what I should have done with that money and mistakes that I made, I will say I kind of just, instead of doing what worked over and over again, trying to find another deal like this, even if it's a smaller one, I tried to shoot for the moon, and it was like, all right, houses are not where it's at. Let me go out there and go look for apartments, right? Go, try to make Grant Cardone money. Try to make 100 grand plus on every single deal. Which what I should have done was, one, keep doing the same boring shit that I kept doing for the past year to get me this deal. And two, not be afraid to spend some of the money that I had here on making the boring shit easier and easier and easier to do. For example, if I was cold calling myself, right? Hire somebody to cold call for me, right? If I was, making these bootleg ass spreadsheets, find a system that'll, handle these spreadsheets a little bit better for me, right? If I was, driving for dollars, maybe look to hire somebody to help me drive for dollars, or start spending money on pulling lists. But again, it was like I should have optimized a lot of the things in here to maximize the return on that money. Just, if I were to name it one thing, was keep doing the boring basics. One of my mentors, Rosie, he says that you got to get really good at doing the very simple stuff over and over and over again, no matter if you're bored or not, right? And even then, again, you're just optimizing little things in your process. But yeah, guys, so that is how I made my first 100 grand. We're still, hoping to, hit bigger deals like that. I know somebody who made a $700,000 assignment fee on her deal, which is just unfathomable. But hopefully it's not unfathomable for too long, and I'm able to hit that as well, or somewhere close to that. But yeah, guys, hope you all got some value out of this content. If you are looking for, help closing your first deal, it might not be this big, but maybe, you make 10, 15 grand. Whenever I made my first 5 grand, it was still the same feeling that this, 100 grand gave me. Because again, before this, I'd only closed like 5 grand, 2 grand deals, 2,500 grand deals. So those were, as a broke 19, 20-year-old, those were amazing. Obviously, this was even more amazing, but the joy from closing those as my first deal was over the moon. So if you need help closing your first deal, obviously feel free to leave a comment down below. Feel free to message me on Instagram, and let's see if we can do something.